Vandaag bij Antwoorden met Bayless Conley.
You're facing a challenge. You don't know what to do right now. You may be at your wit's end. It seems like your little ship is going to, go down any minute. I've got some instruction for you. Listen and then obey.
Welkom bij Antwoorden met Bayless Conley. Het leven kan soms een uitdaging zijn. Maar of het nu gaat om financiën, relaties, gezondheid of de vraag naar je doel in je leven, één ding is zeker. God ziet je. Hij houdt van je. En wat er ook aan de hand is, hij heeft de antwoorden op je vragen.
Open your Bible to John's Gospel, the 10th chapter, if you would. John, chapter 10. Here in John 10, beginning in verse 2, I'd like to read through verse 5. Jesus is speaking, and he said, "But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice. And he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he brings out his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice." And then verse 27, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." I was preaching years ago in a place called Spiez. It's in Switzerland. And I was staying in the mountains in this little sort of inn, a rustic little tiny inn in the mountains, and it was getting around dusk, and I walked out on this little balcony, and I literally felt like I was in the Sound of Music. I mean, there was these just old farms dotting the countryside, green grass everywhere, and there was cows all over these hillsides, and a lot of them had these huge bells under their necks. And I'm just watching this amazing scene, and you've got the Swiss Alps in the background, and these cows grazing in the field. I mean, you expected the flowers to start singing, any moment. And all of a sudden, one of the ranchers from this ranch house or farmhouse let out a call. And to me, it was like a yodel more than anything else. And a whole bunch of those cows, there was a bunch of them just all mixed together. They lifted up their heads immediately and began to run toward that ranch house. And I watched them till they all went inside, into the corral. And none of the other cows even lifted up their heads, except the ones that belonged to that particular rancher, farmer. They knew his voice, and he called them. The other cows didn't go. And that's the concept Jesus is talking about here. My sheep hear my voice, and they follow me. In fact, just think about how many times he said it in these few verses. In verse 3, he said, the sheep hear his voice. He calls them by name. This is a personal thing. Leads them out. In verse 4, the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And again, verse 27, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. They hear, and they follow. They listen, and they obey. And I think if we really boil down our responsibility as believers in its simplest form, you find it right here. We hear, we follow. We listen, and we obey. Now, I don't mean to oversimplify this, but if you're facing a challenge, you don't know what to do right now, you may be at your wit's end, it seems like your little ship is going to, go down any minute, I've got some instruction for you. Listen, and then obey. But Pastor, you don't understand, my marriage is in trouble. Listen, and then do what he says. Pastor, I got financial problems. Here's your answer. Listen, my sheep hear my voice. And then obey. Pastor, my kids, I don't know what to do. Listen and follow. So many things would be solved if we would just do those two simple things. And it's actually a big part of following Jesus. 1 Samuel chapter 15. Israel's first king, his name is Saul. And the cup of judgment has become full for a nation called the Amalekites. They had done some things to Israel 400 years before. The scripture said they had no fear, no reverence for God, and God had given them 400 years to repent, but that repentance never took place. Things just went from bad to worse, and now judgment has come, and that's a different story for another time. But through the prophet Samuel, God speaks to Saul, Israel's first king, and says, all right, judgment time has come to the Amalekites. I want you to go destroy them. Destroy all of them. Don't leave anyone alive. In fact, I want you to kill all of the cattle, all of the sheep, and all of their stuff, all of their resource, all of their treasures. I want you to burn it all, destroy everything. Are we clear? Saul says, yes, we're clear. Well, he goes, and they kill the people, but he saves Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, doesn't kill him, and they just destroy the worthless stuff. But all of the good stuff, all of the good treasures, all of the healthy sheep and the healthy cattle, they keep those. And then Samuel comes along, and Saul comes out and says, hey, I've obeyed the word of the Lord. I did what God said. And Samuel said, how come I hear cattle and I hear sheep? What are you talking about, that you obeyed what God said? Obviously, you didn't do what God said. And then here's this verse that Samuel said to Saul that most of us know, at least in part, quite well. 1 Samuel 15:22. So Samuel said, has the Lord as great a delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. To obey is better than sacrifice, because you cannot make up through sacrifice what you've lost through disobedience. To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed, and that word heed means to listen. God delights in a listening ear and an obedient heart. More than he delights in sacrifice, God delights in people that will hear and follow, that will listen and that will obey. It's the same thing that Jesus said over and over there in John chapter 10 as we read. Let's talk about the first part of this, listening. It is so important. The word heed here, that God delights in those that heed, the Hebrew word literally means to prick up the ears or to incline towards. Sometimes we're so busy with our lives and we have so much internal noise going on and so many distractions about us that we never really hear what he has to say. You know, in Psalm 81 verse 8, God said, oh, that my people would listen to me. In Isaiah 55, God said, listen carefully to me, incline your ear and hear. Now, if God delights in those who listen, he must also delight in communicating. It's not, all right, you need to listen carefully, but I won't speak. It's a fun game, you know. I tell you to listen and incline your ear, but I'll never say anything. It's actually quite fun to see you get so upset and disillusioned and discouraged. But you need to listen. I won't say anything, but you need to listen. No, my friend, God does speak. He will speak, and he delights in communicating. Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice. He said, when the Holy Spirit comes, he will speak, and he will tell you things to come. Some of you that are here, you're so desperately wanting God to lead you. But really, you don't need a leading. You need a reading. You need to spend some time in the book and see what God has already said. If it's clearly taught in Scripture, you don't even need to pray about it. You just need to do it. It's said that St. Francis of Assisi would open the scriptures in the morning, and whatever his eyes fell upon, whatever he read, he would go and do that day. And, you know, that's the kind of heart that we want. I wouldn't suggest doing that because you might read some things that it's not the season for you to do those particular things, or you might read God's specific instructions to a specific individual that may not be for you. But that kind of a heart, when I read something and understand it, I'm going to apply it. I'm not just going to be a listener, but I'm going to be a doer. And when it comes to sharing our faith, raising our kids, the stewardship of our resources, loving our wife, loving our husband, serving in the church, responding to a persecutor, or 1,000 other things, God has already spoken, and he continues to speak to us through his word. We need to get into the word. God speaks through the word. Secondly, he speaks through the witness, and that is the inward witness of the Spirit. Romans 8:16 says, the Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we're the sons of God, that we're the children of God. Now think about that. The Holy Spirit bears witness with our spirit. 1 John 5 and verse 10 says, he who believes in the Son of God has the witness in himself. The same Holy Spirit that bears witness to my salvation in my heart, I know I'm a child of God because I have the witness of the Spirit within me. He also bears witness to the truth or the error of other things as well. And we need to incline our ear and listen for that inward witness. And I'll be honest with you, I've had to learn that in many cases the hard way. Friend, the experts are not always right. The majority is not always right. And you can't just go based on, oh, the door's open, the circumstances, everything's lined up. That's not always right either. God, by his Spirit, has given us an inward witness to guide us. Now think about this. The Spirit bears witness with my spirit that I'm a child of God. He that's believed on the Son of God has the witness in himself. How does God let me know that I got it right when it comes to salvation? An inward witness. He doesn't have angels come down, play trumpets, and unroll scrolls. He doesn't have somebody prophesy to me. No, he gives an inward witness. The most important decision I will ever make as a human being. If I get that one wrong, my friend, I go into an eternity without God. Nothing more important than that. How does God let me know I got that right? An inward witness. Now, the key, whether God has spoken to us clearly through his word, through the witness of the Spirit, or through the weight of a conviction about something, the key is that we do something. We hear and we follow. We listen and we obey. So, let's talk a little about obedience. God delights in a listening ear and an obedient heart. Now back to the story in 1 Samuel 15. Saul understood God's instructions, but as the events unfolded, he thought that he had a better idea. So he edited and modified God's instructions to better suit what he wanted. And his partial, modified, edified, or edited obedience was not acceptable to God, nor were his excuses acceptable. In fact, we're going to read a bit more of the story, and we'll find at least 3 major reasons for his not obeying what God told him. And the thing is, they're very common reasons, same reasons that people edit God's instructions today, why his instructions are not carried out, why they're modified today. A first reason is pride. Pick it up in 1 Samuel 15 and verse 10. Now the word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, I greatly regret that I have set up Saul as king. For he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried out to the Lord all night. So when Samuel rose early in the morning to meet Saul, it was told Samuel, saying, Saul went to Carmel, and indeed he set up a monument for himself and has gone on around, passed by, and gone down to Gilgal. Verse 17, now Samuel finds him. This is what he says. So Samuel said, when you were little in your own eyes, were you not head of the tribes of Israel? And did not the Lord anoint you king over Israel? Saul went from being little in his own eyes to building monuments to himself. From being little in his own eyes to being a big shot. Apparently, he began thinking that his victory over the Amalekites was the result of his prowess and strength as a military leader. His ego became inflated, and he didn't give the credit to God. That led him to thinking that he knew better than God. My friend, it pays for us to stay little in our own eyes. And frankly, every good thing that we have, every good thing that we've achieved should be attributed to the grace of God, because that is the source of it. I was talking to a friend some time ago. He was having a terrific battle with cancer. The doctors had handed him a death sentence, told him that he had only months to live. Well, he beat cancer, and it was many years ago now, and he's alive and well and involved in full-time ministry. But I remember talking with him when he was in the midst of the battle. And he said, Bayless, I've taken so many things for granted. He said, my strength, I've always taken it for granted. He said, my looks, I've always taken them for granted. He said, my ability to think, I've taken for granted. And he actually mentioned a few other things that I won't hear, but he says, I've taken those all for granted. But he said, no more. He said, every day I thank God for these things that I always took for granted before. Saul got full of pride. Figured that it was just him. And the second reason that led to his disobedience was greed. Number one, pride. Number two is greed. Samuel's addressing him in verse 18 and verse 19. Now the Lord, he's talking to Saul, now the Lord sent you on a mission and said, go utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they're consumed. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you swoop down on the spoil and do evil in the sight of the Lord? It's interesting phraseology. Why did you swoop down on the spoil? It's the phrase used to describe a vulture swooping down on a carcass. Now, Saul claimed that he saved all of the good stuff to sacrifice to the Lord, but it wasn't true. That was only an afterthought and an excuse to cover his greed. Vultures don't swoop down on things so they can share them. Their thought is to get what they can while the opportunity lasts. And Saul thought, if I do what God says, I'm going to miss out. If I do this God's way, I'm going to miss out. And that was very, very short-sighted reasoning, because God blesses the obedient. But Saul was not patient enough or trusting enough to wait. And frankly, that's why God's instructions to honor him with our first and our best get modified and edited to giving him our leftovers. When the scripture clearly teaches us to honor the Lord with our first, and that he deserves our best. That's why blessing those that curse us and forgiving those that trespass against us, that gets modified to disdainful toleration for those that have hurt us, or preferring others before ourselves, or being servants, or giving to the poor, or giving up the preferred seat, or helping others achieve their goals, and 100 other things that God tells us clearly. They get edited and modified because we think we will lose out if we do things God's way. But the reality is, It's a lack of patience, of trust, and sometimes just good old-fashioned greed. Third reason is fear. Verse 24 of the same chapter. Then Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord in your words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. I feared the people. Proverbs 29 and verse 25 says, the fear of man brings a snare. It traps us. It captures us. In fact, the story goes on in verse 25, and this is amazing to me. Saul says, now therefore please pardon my sin and return with me that I may worship the Lord. But Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you've rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel. And as Samuel turned around to go away, Saul seized the edge of his robe, and it tore. So Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and has given it to a neighbor of yours who's better than you. And also the strength of Israel will not lie or relent, for he's not a man that he should relent. Then he said, now this is Saul, he said, I have sinned, yet honor me now, please, before the elders of my people and before Israel, and return with me that I may worship the Lord your God. I wonder how many ways it's affected us. The fear of man will turn you into a clone. It will keep you from rising above the pack and from being different. The fear of man will cause you to stifle your gifts and to conform. It will tempt you to lie. It'll cause you to compromise the truth and to disobey God, and it can rob you of your destiny, even as it did with Saul. Now, God delights in a listening ear and an obedient heart. But if you're like me, you've probably fallen short in both of those areas more times than you'd like to admit. So let me tell you something else that God delights in. He delights in showing mercy for those that repent. Micah 7 and verse 8, who is a God like you, pardoning iniquity and passing over the transgression of the remnant of his heritage? He does not retain his anger forever because he delights in mercy. God loves to pardon iniquity and to pass over transgression, and he loves to show us mercy. Now, God delights when we listen and obey. And when we mess up, he delights in being kind and merciful to us when we repent. Thank God for his mercy. So, I just want to ask you, have you been listening, inclining your ear, or is your life so busy and so noisy, and there's so much hustle bustle, and you can have internal hustle bustle going on even when you're sitting without outward things going on? Have you gotten quiet enough to hear? That's why the scripture says, be still and know that I am God. Second question, or admonition if you would, don't modify or edit his instructions to suit what you think. I think God especially delights in our obedience when our own logic seems superior to his. That's when we must not lean on our own understanding, but trust in the Lord with all of our hearts. And if you fail to listen or to obey, or if you've carried out your version of what God has said to you, repent. Receive his mercy. Hello, friend. I am so glad that you have joined me. You know, that message about carrying out what God says, about obedience. In fact, I'm going to say willing obedience. It carries great blessing when we do it. The scripture says, if you be willing and obedient, you will eat the good of the land. Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice and they follow me. They obey me. And as we march into this new year, I suspect that God is going to give you some instructions. He's going to challenge you. He's going to lead you to do something. And I want to encourage you to fearlessly obey Him. Step out in faith and do what God asks you to do. There are always blessings tied to obedience. And frankly, He is worthy of our obedience. So let your heart say, Lord, here I am. Send me. Tell me what to do. And then follow through on whatever He tells you to do. In fact, I pray that God would give you strength and a sensitivity to hear His voice and to understand and know His leading, and that you would have the courage to just step out in obedience to God. And speaking of that, I just want to thank all of those that have obediently and faithfully obeyed God and sowed into what we're doing. We're reaching people for Christ. So thank you for doing that. God bless you, partner, and we will see you again.
Heb je vragen over de uitzending? Of houd je iets bezig waarvoor we kunnen bidden? Schrijf ons dan of bel ons op. Ons team is er voor je.
Heeft de preek je aan het denken gezet? Dan hebben we voor jou een gratis aanbod op onze website over het onderwerp Ervaar de kracht van God. God wil je dragen als je zwak bent. Hij heeft de kracht en wil je deze kracht elke dag opnieuw geven. Maar hoe kunnen we deze kracht dan ontvangen? Baylis Conley heeft een boekje over dit onderwerp geschreven. Ontdek Gods kracht voor jou. Download het boekje gratis op baylis-conley.nl/kracht en laat God je op zijn schouders tillen.
Wil je meer weten en op de hoogte blijven van Antwoorden met Baylis Conley? Meld je dan aan voor de gratis maandbrief van Baylis per e-mail of per post. God zegen.